Elon Musk entered politics after buying Donald Trump and the Republican Party for $250 million to benefit himself, to benefit his stature, his power, and his money. And some of that might still be working out, or at the very least, Donald Trump is trying to help him out, even though he's now transitioned out of the government. And we'll show you the evidence of that. But in terms of his overall impression that the American people have on him, it didn't exactly go well. And I know what you're thinking. Yeah, that's why he left government, so that he could repair his reputation. Okay, well, let's check in and see how that's going for him. So here is Elon Musk's net favorability going back to the beginning of last year. He was, even at that point, before all the politics and the doggy and the cheese head and having to see his lily white belly in the air, he was only a couple points above even. So then you see him gradually going down as he gets more tied in with Donald Trump. His endorsement, he's barely above even. At election day, he goes negative. Trump's term begins, and that's when Musk enters politics himself and is no longer just standing adjacent to fascism, but is actively engaging in it. He goes down and down and down. And now if you look at that rightmost orange line, when he left government, you did see a tiny rise in his favorability. And it made it seem briefly as if, maybe not a bad strategy. Now, notably, he's still like 15 points underwater, but then you'll see that that lasted for like 3 days and then it fell off a cliff again. And he might have stabilized there. We're gonna have to check in another 3 months or 9 months or something like that. But this represents, at the current point, he is down about 25 to 28 points in favorability since the beginning of last year. And all it cost him to do that was roughly $300 million. That's what he spent. He set that much money on fire so that way more Americans could actually hate him. Now, the joke in the end might be on us in a couple of different ways. First of all, although Tesla's stock price has not been doing well over the last year, it has never been tied to anything real. And so it's doing much better than it should. And so he has that going for him. It's down, but he's still able to maintain the vast majority of his wealth off of that because it's just not connected to reality. And so it doesn't matter if their sales go down a ton. It's not tethered to anything objective. But he does have other businesses, and those could actually start doing better soon because the Trump administration is wildly corrupt, obviously. Chaos, crime, and corruption are the 3 C's of this era of politics. And Trump is now pushing states, including Pennsylvania, that you have to shift your strategy for helping to spread broadband access to cheaper options like Starlink. This whole thing about like getting like rural fiber and all of that to make sure that super high speed internet is available to as many people as possible, including lots of Republicans. Screw that. We want you to spend the money on Starlink. And so they're helping to juice business for a massive campaign donor of theirs. This is obvious quid pro quo corruption. And it's also the most expected and unsurprising thing over the past couple of months. And it potentially, by the way, could be a lot of money. So the program that they're trying to shift the focus of is a $42.5 billion program. And as I said, it originally prioritized fiber projects, but under the new rules, states are gonna have to select winners based on the lowest cost. The change will make applications from wireless and satellite internet providers, including Elon Musk's Starlink, more competitive. Now, look, you might think, well, low cost is probably a thing that should be prioritized in a program like this, and sure, but cost isn't the only thing. I mean, even setting aside concerns about corruption, what about like uptime, reliability, the way that the corporation works? There's a lot of other considerations, and it's not like these were only wild blue states that were engaging in this. Red states too were having to balance a lot of different concerns, but that's not how it works in our corrupt society. Instead, no, you give the money to our donors. He gives us 300 million, you give him countless billions. That's how it's supposed to work. And at the end of the day, by the way, this is gonna be a very small amount of money in comparison to what he gets off of like Golden Dome or whatever. But I just want to remind everyone of how varied and constant the corruption actually is. Now, that said, let's talk about another aspect of this. As we've described in other videos, Musk is once again suckling at the teat of government, gobbling up contracts that his corporations don't deserve. But at the same time, the work he's already done in government is continuing to cause problems. And Trump and those who are left in doggy after Elon Musk left are having to clean up the messes. So there's new reporting. CNN did a great breakdown of some of the numbers, and we'll talk about a few of them, about how the Trump administration is continuing to have to scramble to rehire key federal workers after the doggy firings. Again, because it turns out that before you fire tens of thousands of people, you should probably think about it. And this is both stupid and costly. Now, look, I also think it's wildly immoral and dehumanizing to fire all these people without even understanding what their job is and then ask them to come back. That's terrible. I understand that that's not going to be persuasive to Elon Musk or these other tech sociopaths. They believe you break stuff and whatever. These aren't people, they're just numbers on a spreadsheet. But again, the other number on the spreadsheet is how much you're spending to do this. When you fire all these people, ostensibly to generate savings for the government, and then you end up having to pay even more money over litigation and rehiring them, this was stupid in every way that it could be. And so look, I wanna break down some of the specifics to really sell this. So here's one of, I think, the most offensive. And so earlier this month, Voice of America called back dozens of Farsi speakers, one of the languages that's used in Iran, who had been on paid administrative leave since March. So they were fired because we probably aren't gonna need anyone who speaks Farsi or anything like that. Donald Trump's definitely not gonna get us in a war. And then, oops, we need to bring them back. And they did. And do you know what they did after that? For many of them, they fired them again. They fired them, then they brought them back, and then they fired them yet again. And the expectation will be, well, if we ever need them, when Trump starts the war again, I guess we could just rehire them. And look, they do an important task, but I honestly hope at a certain point, they tell the government to go F itself. I think that you have to stand up for yourself at some point, but it's not just Voice of America. At the Department of Agriculture, they halted plans to lay off 25% of its staff at dozens of facilities responsible for responding to the bird flu. Thank God, I could have told you that on day one. It's taken till now for them to figure that out. The National Weather Service, which lost more than 560 employees to layoffs and early retirement incentives earlier this year, received permission to rehire about 1 in 4 or 5 of them for its forecast offices around the country, despite a federal firing freeze, because their job is important and necessary. They're still not back up to the level they were at before, which is bad news for people across the country, particularly when it comes to such inclement weather that it could actually lead to a danger to your life, but at least they're reversing some of it. The Department of Health and Human Services reinstated 450 employees at the CDC who were fired as part of a massive reorganization in April, including workers focused on HIV and childhood lead exposure. Again, in their defense, nobody could have predicted that those were important positions that you shouldn't fire people from. But whatever, they're rehiring some of them. More than 200 employees at their firings rescinded at the CDC's National Center for HIV, Viral Hepatitis, STD, and Tuberculosis Prevention, along with 158 at the National Center for Environmental Health. And so it just repeats itself over and over and over again. You need these people. Now, you don't necessarily need everyone or every program, and you can engage, as the government always does and always has, in efforts to make these cuts. But you don't just put a person in who is most notably known for being a dumb donkey and then tell them to go wild and just fire a lot of people. And then we'll rehire them back, and it'll cost more than just keeping them there the entire time. That's no way to run a government. It's also, by the way, no way to run a business.